Coming to you direct from the nerve center of the galaxy's greatest comic. This is the 2000 AD Thrillcast.
Borak Thung, athletes, and welcome to the latest episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast Lockdown Tapes. I am your host, as always, Mulchar, and on this episode, we're having another retro episode where we go back to an interview from the past. And this week we are revisiting our 2018 interview with Henry Flint. Now, I hope you all enjoyed the Trevor Hirsign interview that we did last week. He references his long-standing friendship with Henry, so it seemed like a nice compliment to revisit our chat with Henry. This was a two-parter, which I've merged into one. So, I hope you enjoyed this one. Before we get started, a couple of things to pick up on. First of all, I hope you've all very much listened to what I said last time and have picked up the Black Beth special by Alec Worley and Danny. Very much worth your time. Also, the sci-fi special for 2021 is now available to pre-order from the 2000 AD webshop. This is a dreadful sci-fi special where all the stories are interlinked and crossovers between different Dreadworld characters. So you've got Inspector Inabe, you've got Armitage, you've got Anderson, you've got Cursed Earth Coburn. I'll leave it there. But yeah, pop along to 2000AD.com to order your copy. Also, if you've not been along to the shop in a little while and you feel like you need some summer attire to go along with this slowly but surely reopening world that we're now a part of, then check out the clothing section of the website, where you'll be able to find some brand spanking new designs, including classic 2000 AD logos. We've got Rogue Trooper stuff. We've got Slain. There's the Gaze into the Fist of Dread t-shirt, which has proven very, very popular. So head along there and check those out. I'm going to be adding more and more designs as the years go, as the year goes on. As always, without much further ado, let's crack on with the Henry Flint episode from the strange and distant land known as 2018. I kind of want to start off by talking about the small house, which obviously is still running in the prog at this point in time, so we'll be light on the spoilers because you've just delivered the last episode of that, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, I delivered the last episode. It was episode 10, but it was right on the deadline, and I think there was is already up to issue 7 or 6 or 7 in the comic. So yeah, it's scary stuff.
But is that kind of, is that normal? Do you normally run the deadlines or?
Yeah, no, I asked Matt for the deadlines because it helps me, to be honest. I kind of get to a point where I spend too much time, especially if it's the summer and the sun's out and everything. The time can just go, and I can spend a day where I just don't do any work at all. So I kind of need the deadlines to give myself incentive to do it. Yeah.
with the small house itself, I mean, there's been a lot of really great feedback on the story. Tell me a little bit about the genesis of the story, because you've worked with Rob quite a lot now. You worked with the team on Trifecta, so Al, Simon, and Rob, and then you did Titan and Enceladus. And you're now doing the small house. Are the ideas for these something that you discuss with Rob, or?
No. These are ideas that Rob's come up without me interfering at all. I mean, it's his thing, and I only know what I'm doing when Matt sends me a script that Rob's been doing, and I take a look, and it's usually the first episode. So I get the first episode in, and that is all I have to judge the entire series, and usually I'm in the same position as the reader, so I'm kind of in a position where I read the script and I think, okay, where is this going to go? And I don't know where it's going to go, and so I'm completely in the dark, and Rob's got me as a reader at the same time, but I like that because it's it keeps me wanting to know what happens next, so I'm
so when you've got that first episode, like you say, you've got to make that value judgment kind of immediately how the whole thing is going to pan out. Has there been a time that you've been progressing through a strip and you've thought, crap, I've got this completely wrong?
Yeah, a few times. I couldn't give you any examples offhand, but I think it was worse a few years ago. Well, when I first started, there was a time I wouldn't read the entire script first. I'd read a page and then draw the page and then read the next page, and that has so many problems because you just end up drawing. You'd read the next page and it would say someone does something which needs him to be carrying something which you didn't realise he's carrying, or that kind of thing, and you just think, I've got to redo this and that. But I think it was talking to other comic creators. They did prelims, and that was something that I didn't do as well.
Right.
So I've only been doing that for the last 10 years. And before that, I just didn't do prelims. It was just going straight into the pencils. But I can't say I could ever go back, because doing prelims is essentially the brain work of the whole thing. It's where you do all the work, and the rest, you can listen to the radio and just let your mind wander a bit. But that full concentration of the prelims, that's quite an important part of the process.
I mean, that's remarkable. It just never occurred to you to do that?
No, it didn't. I didn't know people did it, to be honest.
Right.
I think there was a book, there was this American artist, is it John Burns or someone like that? And his prelims were wonderful. He brought a little book out or something. I thought, that's interesting.
That seems like a useful thing to do.
Yeah, and then, but he was using them. He would scale them up using one of these machines, and he would use the prelims as rough pencils. Yeah, and that was something that I perhaps. I don't have one of those machines. I probably would if it would do it that method, because sometimes the prelims come out better than the actual real work.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Because
the sliding scale, you have. I hope I'm not going to slander him here. Somebody like PJ Holden, whose prelims are quite rough. And just kind of indication of action.
Mine are as well.
Right.
It's literally stick figures.
You've got the other end of the scale, which is Dylan Teague, who's prelims, and I'm doing the rabbit ear thing in the air, because they're not prelims, they're full pencils, on a very small scale.
Yeah, and he uses those wonderful markers and just gets everything looking great. I mean, mine have just. So rough that you can't really make out, and they're all covered in writing, and there's little arrows saying not enough space here and things like that, and it's all in artistic shorthand, so that only I know what's going on. Right.
Coming back to the small house, so you didn't know the reveal. You didn't know the sort of ending reveal. That's probably the wrong word. The ending of the story.
No, I didn't.
Do you think that helps because you say that you refer to yourself as a reader while you're doing that process. Do you think that actually helps that you get the timing of it?
Yeah,
in a certain way.
Yeah, how do you mean? Sort of the timing of the
timing of how you portray time within the strip, because you're discovering it as you go along.
Yeah.
Have you? I mean, I don't know. Have you got more of an acute sense of the highs and the lows?
No, I think that's something that the writer knows. I mean, the writer always talks about. I'm trying to think of the terminology they use, but it's things like punch points or something.
Sure.
That type of thing. I've got the word wrong, but not bullet points. There's something that they talk, but it's the way the story moves, and it goes boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Beats. That's it. And that is really is a writer thing, and I don't think I can portray that artistically. It's just a matter of having confidence with the writer that they know what they're doing. But as far as I'm concerned, that my beats usually go for which is the biggest panel of the page, and that will have more of an impact on the way I tell a story and the way that things sort of pan out. I mean that comes from that's right. The birth of 2000 AD, isn't it? Where it was the first, not the first comic, but before 2000 AD, they had about 13, 14 panels per page in British comics. And I think it was Pat Mills that looked at the American comics. To me, it was something like Thor or something. I remember hearing in an interview he said, and thinking, right, there's 6 or 7 panels. We'll do that format, and then one of those panels will be a big splash, and I've kind of kept that ethos, thinking, yeah, that's a good way to do it, because 6 panels is, you can't equally have 6 panels on a page, because it just looks a bit threadbare. There's so much room, and the pages on 2000 are so big that you can afford to shrink down some of these panels really quite small, and just to give another panel a really big epic feel. You know, that's.
It's something I've noticed about the small house is your use of panel sizes and location, and how often you'll place them over the top of other panels. So quite often I noticed also on your Dredd movie tie-in work, there'll be the big splash panel which goes out behind the other panels. It is essentially the page upon which the other panels are placed, and then you seem to use that to make panels punchier. I'm thinking the moment, and anyone who's not read The Small House needs to stop listening now and go and read it, but the moment where Dredd turns to Hershey and says, "I no longer recognise your authority," that panel of Hershey in shock, you've essentially lifted that off the page almost. Yeah.
There's about 3 or 4 pictures after that that are the aftermath of what Dredd actually says, and they're all pictures, the splash pictures placed over the top of the main picture of Dredd. So it's kind of like, Dredd says this needs to be the big panel, and the one that has the importance is it's the establishing shot, if you like, establishing what Dredd is saying, and then you have the just the reaction shots that just over the top. I think that's something that Frank Miller did a lot in his early 80s work. That was something that caught my eye. he used to do little tiny panels, and but with just a little tiny face in them, and then the balloons wouldn't even be in the panels; they'd be pointing at the panels, or something like that. I thought that's nice. That just looks interesting, and coming up with things like that. Anything to break up the page and make the page look slightly different, and just having fun with it. I think it's important. Yeah, and I think Small Houses. I mean, it surprised me. I've kind of I wasn't even aware of what was going. I think Rob said, "Yeah, this will be a good one. This will be. We've got a few surprises in this one." I think he told me. I went, okay, but you go into it thinking that's just another job.
Yeah.
You're not really thinking anything else, and then you start getting into the story, and then you turn the page, and then you realise, oh no, what's happened here? I won't spoil anything, but there's a few moments where I'll just turn the page, and I usually go down to Witherspoon's, my local 5 minutes walk away, and that's where I read the script. I print out, read the script, and do the prelims in the pub,
right,
with a coffee and free coffee top-ups, and spend a few hours in there, and I was verbally giving some kind of outwardly verbal moments where I'm sure people around me were going, "Oh right, what's going on there?" And it's just me reading the script, and I was going, "No." It's great.
Because how invested do you get when you're doing the script as it's being revealed to you by the writer?
Yeah, because it's a completely different time, because the reader reads it. I don't know how long the reader takes to read it, but you're reading something over the space of 6 months or so, and then you're spending so much time. So it's like everything is happening in slow motion, and it's like everything is just winding very slow. So someone's emotion will just last a couple of days almost, as opposed to just a reader flashing through it on a page, and it's you kind of just get wrapped up in it, and I suppose it's melodrama, isn't it? It's that all those things, and it's it's going to be quite exciting, really. Yeah.
One of the early the earliest kind of what the fuck moment in the Small House was that wonderful page where Smiley turns to Dredd and says, "We're fascists."
Yes.
Now, having spoken to Rob about that, the use of the big splash image of Dredd, that Smiley's not even in that panel, was your choice.
Was it my choice?
That's what he told me.
Oh, right. I can't remember what it said in the script, but I kind of think he said something like a Dredd close-up over half the page.
Right.
He said, but I can't remember whether he included Smiley there or it said Smiley point of view. He might have said that. I can't remember, to be honest. But no, I thought it was just him. It was just Dredd. I wasn't sure that Smiley was included in that one.
But it's one of those moments of, I mean, high emotion. Nobody reading that can miss the fact that.
Well, he said it in the script. He said this is a big moment. so he said make sure make sure you have some impact.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh right, okay. So when you got things like that in the script from Rob, you don't really have to work too hard on doing the drawing.
Here was me going to ask all these questions about how you trust each other. I was just like, put this in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rob's got an incredible way of writing, you see, because he uses emotion and things in his the way he delivers. So it's rather than giving a technical, detailed where everyone's standing or where the camera should be shot. He just talks about how the characters are feeling.
Right. Okay.
And that really gets you involved, and you're just thinking, oh, right, how best do I tell this story if this character is feeling like this?
Yeah.
You know, and that is a completely different way of telling a story than John Wagner, who will just kind of just say, this is where Dredd is, Dredd, and that's it. That'll be all he'll say, and leave the rest to you. But so there's different ways of doing a story. There isn't a right or wrong, and Rob's is I really enjoyed writing Rob's scripts. I think he has something that it's just really interesting to read. Simple as that, really.
Right. I mean, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the Wagnerian?
Well, the Wagner one, you don't really need to know how people are feeling, because the Wagner scripts that I've been getting are comedy scripts. So you don't need to know how people are feeling most of the time. It's just who's in the shot, and that's the most important thing. So you can the comedy comes out a lot more when you're using where everything is quite basic in its storytelling approach. So yeah, it's he does have John is quite minimal in the way that he gives the instructions, but of course there's quite a lot of dialogue. He uses a lot of dialogue, so it's I mean, if no one was telling me who was writing which script, and I got a script in, I could probably tell who was writing it. Quite easily. I mean, Rob's emotional. John Wagner's minimalist, and Al is surreal. I'm trying to think of other writers now, but those are the few that I've been working. Yeah.
How invested are you in Dredd as a character? Is he a character you've always wanted to draw?
I haven't always wanted to draw him. He wasn't. I read 2000 since the beginning, and he wasn't my first favourite script in 2000, and I never really thought I'd ever be drawing in 2000 at all. But Dredd is I was given the opportunity to draw Dredd quite early on, and I didn't really think that that would happen, to be honest, and I kind of taken to it, and the character has taken to me, and I kind of made it work. But in no way was it any kind of ambition to draw Dredd.
Okay. So when I've interviewed people in the past, they've always sort of cited their influences, but it's always tended to be people who've had an eye on drawing him. So what are your influences? Was it a process whereby those influences were latent, and you go, I'll just draw on these, or did you go, oh crap, I've got to draw Dredd? Who from this smorgasbord of styles do I draw from?
I had sort of my favourite artists were McMahon and Bolland and Ezquerra and all the greats from the early 2000s, and Bonelli and O'Neill as well, and so those were the ones that I'd been brought up on. it's difficult to say the influences, because I don't think there's a lot of influence comes out of. It must do though, but I think it's subconsciously. It comes from all these different artists, and more to do with 2000 artists than say a DC or Marvel type artist. Although I probably was more influenced by people in Europe. I was a big fan of Heavy Metal magazine, and the Metal Hurlant, the original, in the 70s, and I managed to get myself a couple of copies of that, and with Mobius and those characters, and I think it's sort of a mishmash of all those different characters, but you see, with Judge Dredd, it's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say it because it's difficult, because you have to sort of delve into your own head and see where you've come from. But and I'm trying to think where it has come from, and I think what I really enjoy doing the most is inventing new characters and drawing new things, and that it gets me a lot more excited. Well, when I'm drawing Dredd, I know it's a character that's already existed, and I think it was polished up. McMahon sort of took Dredd and took the character and moulded him into something a bit different to its original Carlos sort of creation, and I thought, well, I can't really mould him any further, because I think was it Brendan McCarthy sort of he took the character even further, but by having the flared helmet and things like that, and you could see that this direction that Dredd could go if other artists picked up on it, but I don't think many artists did. But I thought, well, I'm going to have to, if I've got to base my Dredd on anything, it's going to be McMahon and Bolland Dredd, because those got it. It doesn't need improving. And there's no artist from the 90s I can think of that took it, Dredd, any further than McMahon and Bolland. I could be wrong. I'm trying to think if there was one. Simon Bisley did a Heavy Metal Dredd. That was that was interesting, but I think it was a full stop. Only Bisley could draw like that, and then it got quite. There's a few painterly Dredds in the 90s, and that also is a artistic stop. I don't think that has been progressed. So it's McMahon and Bolland really.
I saw a lot of Ezquerra in Titan, particularly in the scenes where Dredd's essentially being tortured and beaten up, and it kind of struck me that kind of, how to describe it, gritty bluntness is a kind of Ezquerra quality I see in your stuff. At no time do you seem to be disguising.
I like that. Ezquerra said something. He said he prefers drawing Mega City 1 grim and gritty rather than nice and shiny and chrome and sparkling, and he really gets into all the pipes and the grime and just dirt and rubbish everywhere, and I kind of agree. It's much more interesting to draw, and so when you have Dredd beaten up as he was on Titan, and you kind of think, this is the bit. This is the bit where, I think it comes from the what was it? Those films, Clint Eastwood films with the
sort of the man with no name.
Man with no name. Yeah, I think there was one of them where he was just really was beaten up. I think it was Fistful of Dollars or something, or I could be wrong, a few dollars more, and he was beaten up, and then it's that point where you just think, there's no other way. There's no other way for this character to act. He's got to get up on his feet, and he's got to beat these guys, because this is the story now, and I love those moments. Someone will write me the fact that Dredd's been beaten up and he's in a bad way, and I just think, let's really go to town. Let's really make Dredd in a bad way. And so his ultimate redemption of getting better and beating the bad guys just is even better.
Because that's happened a few times through his history. The Cursed Earth is the obvious early one. City of the Damned, even stuff like. Do you remember when Stan Lee's daughter? It was in the 90s, where it was painted by John Burns.
Oh, right.
And she came back and sort of tortured Dredd under the city, and that was a similar kind of thing where she's like eventually.
Yes. What he was kept in a cage or something.
Yeah, he was like bound up and
for quite a few weeks or something. That was a strange story.
I love the fact that he encouraged the rats to come and chew on the bindings because they were covered in his blood, and then I don't know, he either broke the neck of the rat or he bit it or something. That's fine.
It's great. Yeah,
but you're right. It's that kind of how far, because Rob's talked about this in terms of Titan.
Yes.
How far can you push a man of principle? And usually it's quite far, and the breaking point is quite far. City of the Damned, he went blind, didn't he? So that it was dealing with all that. But it's trying to find another angle on how broken you can break someone. Oh my goodness. But Dredd gets broken up, doesn't he? But his character is someone that you kind of aspire to, that no matter what happens, he will get through whatever people throw at him. So and not make a fuss. There was another point in one of the Judge Dredd annuals where there's is at the flea pit where everyone's covered in fleas, and someone says, well, why aren't you getting bitten by fleas? And he says, I am. I'm just not scratching. And I think that is Dredd all over, because it just says he deals with the pain. He buries everything. His humanity just buries everything down, so no one can see who he is, what he is, and even his pain. No, he won't even. The readers don't even know what pain he's going through, because he sort of doesn't show it. He'll just say, grit his teeth and get through it. Because that's some of the yours and Rob's work has touched on is how brittle that makes him as a character, and actually how when it comes to because he's an expression of Justice Department. He is the big faceless fascist boot boy who has no emotion. But that does make him vulnerable to cracking as opposed to breaking, as it were. He
has cracked on a few occasions, hasn't he? Yeah.
But in terms of how you portray him, what are the kind of elements of that portrayal? So do you consciously or intuitively have him stand a certain way, look a certain way, hold himself a certain way?
in a kind of way that he, at those points where he's breaking. Yeah, there is a lot of body language that you can use, especially when you're not talking about the dialogue so much, and it won't come through in Dredd's dialogue. He won't. So you have to express and to the reader how Dredd is feeling, not through his words, but through how he holds his own body, you know. And if you can sort of slunch him over a tiny bit and make him look as though he's run into a brick wall, even better. I mean, he does on occasion, a lot of occasions, does. He needs help, doesn't he? Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's like trying to, and I've never analysed Dredd, to be honest. And it's interesting to sort of take this character, because he's not like the American superheroes, is he? He's completely different, and he doesn't let anger so much. I mean, there's the anger is written into the story all the time. Rob says, right, Dredd is really angry now, but I kind of think, yeah, he's angry, but it's kind of like it's a strange anger that doesn't give away any of his character.
So it's suppressed, isn't it?
It's suppressed anger. Up, yeah. He's gritting his teeth, but he's keeping control. So the anger's there, but the control, he hasn't lost it. He hasn't lost the control.
Because there's that lovely moment in that first or second episode of The Small House where Smiley says something and Dredd clearly sort of forms a fit, like his hand involuntarily just kind of clenches, and you used that little motif almost like a little star, just as a moment of action. I quite like that.
Ah, right, yes.
Do you remember doing that?
I can't remember doing that, to be honest with you. It might have been written in the script.
Right.
Rob might have said, he forms a fist or something like that. Yeah. I like that little motifs and putting little things in just to...
Because one of the things I noticed that you share with an artist like Arthur Ransom, for example, is a great appreciation of silence as a means of controlling the flow of time in a page. So when Ransom was doing Button Man, for example, he would insert silent panels into the strip to measure out the amount of time, the passage of time on the page when he thought it was going too quickly. And certainly in your Judge Dredd work, that seems to be a feature as well, where you've got a lot of times when the panel is focusing on Dredd not saying anything, not doing anything, he's being very still. Again, is that something you consciously do? Is it something from the script?
Sometimes I don't do it so much with Rob's work. There's been a couple of times I've added a few panels here and there with Rob. I mean, one of them was the reaction shots of the when in the recent one where Dredd says, "I've lost." What did he say?
I no longer recognise your authority.
Yeah, and with all those panels, and all I did was add a little. It was just that one of the visor, but the only reason I added that was because there was a big empty space there. But you know, I do add panels here and there.
Yeah.
When I mean that was a purely page format reason why I added one. So that was a bit naughty of me to do that. But I do add them when I think it is necessary to.
You see, I love that. One of the things I enjoy about comics is how practical considerations can inadvertently impact storytelling.
And the big one is the square panels. If you do a square panel, the only other panel that can go next to a square panel is another square panel. So that can really alter the way you design a page. So nice long elongated panels are good and things like that. But and it seems to telling stories it's you have to get the page right at the beginning. I mean, because that's where all the brain work happens. That's
It's every art form has elements that are forced upon it by the nature of the physical object. So novels have to work in a certain way, short stories have to work in a certain way, comic books very much have to work in a certain way. And we kind of touched on it already, but I wanted to see what you thought about how much what you do is gut instinct, intuitive, and how much of the thinking you do when you're doing your prelims now, how much you're consciously going, well, that needs to go there, that needs to go there, or whether it's coming out of the pencil in your hand rather than
a lot of it is intuitive, a lot of it is trying to it's like a puzzle, and there's so many different elements. You've got to get the story right, you've got to be aware that the reader is reading it, and you don't want to confuse the reader too much. But if the story is really simple and there's it's a simple story, then you've got the luxury of making it even more complicated. So by adding more panels or making the angles slightly and going a bit more arty, but as long as it's coherent, and that's the main thing you're looking for is a coherent story. So you got that to consider, and then you got the limitation of the page. So you've got to think about where the best use of the page, and how to cram everything in without, but also making sure that you don't have any blank spaces, you don't have any sort of spaces there that needs things to go in. You've got to make use of everything, and there's and then there's the balloons, where the balloons go, because the balloons have to not cross. They've got you know what I mean? You've got to have the right
first speaker on the left.
Yeah, first speaker on the left. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's not the first speaker on the left. It's the last speaker on the right, because you've got more than one speech balloon coming from someone, and then you've got a reply coming from someone else, which means the last person has to be on the right. But and it usually doesn't make any sense when you look at it and you think, well, why is that person there? And so there's that to consider. There's how much space does the balloons. I mean, there's someone that uses very minimal amount of text, like Rob. It is interesting because you've got so much more space to play with. With John Wagner's, you've got to really, really concentrate, because there's so much dialogue. It's often 2 or 3, 4 people talking all over each other, and you just need space for this dialogue to go. But yeah, I've picked up some interesting tips. Things like if you have a character, you can have a nice long panel where the head is at the top and the body covers the entire panel, so you're not wasting any space. So if you've got a massive amount of text, all that text can go over the body with the head at the top. So it looks nice, rather than having a little head at the bottom of the panel and a big empty space above the head for the lettering to go. So that's a good tip.
Yeah.
It's you can draw the bodies and allow text to go over the bodies, and I think that's people shouldn't be afraid of having their artwork being covered over.
Because you've been working in comics for
94.
Oh, right, okay.
That was 2000.
About 25
yeah,
years.
that's with 2000 AD.
Yeah.
But before that, there was a couple of years with other comics as well.
How much, therefore, of what you do now is just sheer experience of having done it for that long? Because I'm noting that you've only done prelims for about 10 years.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think it's a learning process all the time, because I kind of get the script. Sometimes I get the script and I think I don't know how to handle this, and it needs some really. You need to think about it quite a lot, because it's almost like you're learning from scratch, and this will be the job that you work on, that you can't figure out how to do it anymore. and so, yeah, sometimes I have learned and picked up a lot of tips, and my figure work at the beginning, especially in the 90s, was dreadful. I look back on some of that stuff and think, wow, yeah, I actually have improved quite a bit on the figure work, and faces and expressions and things like that. My work was a lot more cartoony and wooden in the olden days, and I look at that stuff and think, oh yeah, I have made an improvement, and I wasn't as raw talent as I thought I was. I was just someone who was still learning to draw, and just got lucky to be offered a job when I did. Because of course I got the job when there wasn't a lot of people in the job at the time, because they'd all gone over to work for the States and things like that, and there was a big void, there was a big gap in the 90s. So I was one of these lucky characters that sort of just went, yeah, there's a space for me, because it was really unpopular. The 90s were unpopular for comics. The 80s were massive. You had, obviously Watchmen and all the rest of it, Dark Knight and everything, and but it didn't. I thought that there'd be a natural progression. It would that type of thing would run on throughout the 90s, but it didn't. It kind of just went into this. People call comics adult comics, and they thought, well, just because it had a few swear words in it, that would turn it into an adult comic, and it didn't. It was just an adult comic is using your brain to interpret things, and that type of story just wasn't there in the 90s, and it kind of went to. You had all this laddism. Everyone was buying the loaded magazines and things like that, and you had all the music, Britpop, and comics were really, really unpopular. I think I remember there was one Comic Con one year, I think right in the 87 or something, and that was in Manchester, and then the following year there was none. There was not a single Comic Con anywhere, and then it's after the 90s it built up to what it is today, but it was almost dead in the water, comics.
Well, it's kind of weird how it had been such a part of the zeitgeist with Deadline and Crisis, and then within 3 or 4 years
it just disappeared.
I
don't know where it went. It's just no one was interested anymore.
Because we were a Deadline reader.
I was, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and Crisis, and anything that 2000 brought out, really. And Dice Man as well, and just everything that they produced.
So let's sort of go right back to the beginning and talk about the comics you were reading as a kid, because that's always interesting, that's always illustrative. You've been with 2000 AD since the beginning, but were you a voracious comic book reader?
Yeah. I've often said it was the first comic that I picked up and read was Jack and Jill, when I was...
which I think we now own.
Yeah, I've even got... Can you see? I'm pointing to it now. The Jack and Jill Annual 1974. And I love that. I'll show you that later, because it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And the artwork in it is incredible. It's so... it's like a quality publication for 4-year-olds, 3 or 4-year-olds, and all 3 or 4 years they'd just rip up the comic and they wouldn't appreciate it. But you look at that stuff and think, wow, and they're probably all drawn by people who fought in World War II and things like that, and they're all drawing otters and rescuing a beach ball on the beach from someone, helping out a little child, and they're all doing things like that, and you just think these World War II veterans are working on these children's stories, and the poetry is just like, it's gorgeous, and
so I think that's what it's either Pat or John, I think, mentions about the juvenile division at IPC or working at DC Thompson, and yes, you're producing comic books for children, but these people achieve things that
they've done things that couldn't even dream about. Yeah, absolutely. So there was that. There was after that, the 70s were really good for IPC comics. Buster, Whoopee, and I think it was Whoopee that had I'm trying to think of the name of the Worldwide Weirdies. Ken Reid, yeah, and also in Faceache in Buster, and it was right at the tail end of his career that I kind of picked up on. He was just like my favourite artist when I was about 6.
I can really see that now. Now that you mention it, I totally see it.
Yeah. I thought it was great, and in particular the Worldwide Weirdies, it'd have like the border, which was full of a space scene with little aliens and spaceships and all these things, and I used to love that, and it used to be a different colour each week, and it's just weird things like that, just the design of it, just what colour would it be? Purple this week, great. It looks so good in purple, that border, and it would be just strange. I mean there was no computers back there, was there? That's all you had was what colour would something be printed in this week. That was my highlight. Oh dear. So it's that. Then 2000 came along, and obviously that just got me hooked. And there was what other things? I think later on. Marvel and DC American comics, that they didn't quite get me, because round here I couldn't buy them, and I couldn't figure out where these things came from. I was aware of Batman and the rest of it, but I didn't know where these comics were bought or sold. I think it was just newsagents, but they're so tucked away I just never was able to find them. It's living down in Devon, I think. But I did get into European comics and underground comics sort of in my early teens, and the whole history of that, and trying to figure out what everything was, because there was a lot of information out there. There was a lot of for instance, I liked the Storm, which was the Don Lawrence thing, and that was coming through. I'd buy a lot of every time I was in Amsterdam or something on a school holiday. I'd pick up some comics that were all in Dutch, and I couldn't read them, but a lot of them were the Storm comics, and then there'd be other things as well. There'd be Conan I'd buy, but that would be in French.
Yeah.
So so I couldn't read those either, but I'd just buy them for the pictures. So, and then I'd be buying the things that only were produced in France and things like that. And and the Dylan Dog, of course, and a few Italian things. I think that was Italian. I'm not sure, but. I don't think there was enough choice for me in the British market because after 2000 British comics were sort of winding up, and there wasn't anything as good as 2000 for a start. There was perhaps sorry, that's my stomach. I don't know if that you.
I didn't realise there was a dog in here.
So I mean, I'm trying to think what kind of other things I was influenced with, but I think it was everything other than the American.
That's really interesting because the vast majority of people that I talk to, they read 2000 AD and enjoyed it, but they then found. Either prior to 2000 AD or afterwards, they found their natural reading. Their reading naturally gravitated towards American comics, but you went.
Yeah, I just went a completely different route, and I went the European route.
Is this geographical? Is it just that's the kind of things you could access?
Well, it had a lot to do with what you could access, and there was a comic shop in Exeter at the time that would sell European reprints in English, and there was what else was there? There was. I don't think it was up until it wasn't up until mid-teens that I got into everything that was American stuff. Really, I'm trying to think of. Well, obviously. I was thinking of Watchmen then, but even that is British creation, isn't it? But the Dark Knight and everything like that, I kind of forced myself to get into that and liked it and thought, oh, okay, there is something out there that's produced by America that's good. But I had some favourites which I found. But they weren't probably the Batmans and everything like that, because I like Firestorm, which was this character that had atomic abilities to change things. But whenever I talk about Firestorm to other people, they kind of go, oh, well, he's like a minor DC superhero. He didn't really no one really picked up on it, and it's not really that good. It's great. Firestorm, he can change things atomically. What's not good about that? That's great, and he had fire coming out of his head. He looked great. And then another one that I really liked was Booster Gold, which no one liked. I can't find anyone.
I'm fairly sure Kieran Gillen likes Booster Gold.
And that is the weird thing, because I thought, oh, right, this is great, Booster Gold, and I'd be reading Booster Gold and said, next month there'll be the Booster Gold will tell us his origin story. I was, oh, great! And then next month we're going to reveal Booster Gold's mobile. Oh, great! That's great. And I'm thinking, and I talk about this to other people. Say, no, you don't understand it. You don't understand American comics. If that's what you think American comics are, you don't understand it. And then there was another one with what was it? I'm trying to think of all the stuff. Yeah, it was a British remake, not a British remake, but a British reprint, and it was called The Thing is Big Ben. I don't know if you've heard of it. It was about 20 odd issues, but it was all reprinted stuff. They had Iron Man in there, and it was just grim, Fantastic Four thing, and it was his comic. But it was a British thing, and I remember buying it. I bought every issue, and I remember not liking it at the time, but buying it anyway. And I don't know. I mean, what was that about?
Because they used to do reprints of Silver Age DC stuff.
Yeah.
In British size.
Yes.
With like painted covers.
They did a lot of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I bought the Steve Ditko thing where he lifted up the thing, and that was my first Spider-Man that I read. Was that, and I never realised that was such an iconic moment in Spider-Man's history.
It's strange if you kind of, I suppose you need to be in the right brain space. And this may be your experience, it was certainly mine, that quite a lot of American comics was such a change of pace and tone and theme from 2000 AD. I kind of even go, okay. This guy I used to babysit for had a near complete collection of Uncanny X-Men. Like he had, I think, his earliest issue was number 6, so right back at the beginning, and he was like, oh, you know, when you put the kids to bed, you can go up and read them. And I sit down and read a couple. I go, yeah, all right, and then I just go and watch TV. I feel like such a philistine now. But if it's not your speed, then.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that I did like. I mean, Ronin, Frank Miller, I thought that was a graphic novel was amazing.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be paced really well. I don't know what it would have read like in a comic in individual issues though, but because I've never read the individual issues, but it's that old thing, isn't it, of 22 pages, and you can tell a story a lot slower, but I mean, Frank Miller's stuff I did get into, because I mean, you had the Daredevil. I had a few issues of that when it came out.
Do you think that's to do with the style of it? That it is so stylish. It's so not unique, but very much Frank Miller.
It could be. I think it could be the way that he drew figures. It seemed to me it was getting away from drawing figures in a very that stylized superhero mold, and drawing them like sketches, and being really rough and raw with the pen, and I like that appealed to me,
because it's. I mean, so far it's been interesting that you mentioned Miller, you've mentioned Ken Reed, you've talked about some of the slightly greater excesses of American comics in their silliness. I see, and correct me if I'm wrong, a tendency towards the more bizarre, the more surreal.
Kind of stuff. That would include Kevin O'Neill's stuff as well. Because that stuff, he was my favourite artist for a long time in the early 2000s. I just thought his because that was exactly it. He had a sensibility about him that was. When you look at an artist and you can't figure it out, and you're just thinking, why has he chosen this way to draw something? And the style is not complicated, but it kind of jars. And you just go, wow, he's done that. That is such a great idea. what made him do that? And I like artists who do that. It's like people having fun with your brain, I'm trying to think of other artists that have done the same. It's the same thing as Heath Robinson. He was another artist that when I was a kid I had a Heath Robinson book, and it was just full of weird inventions. And that did exactly the same for me. It was just poring over the artwork and just thinking, well, why would someone draw this? If you're going to invent something, you wouldn't do this, because that's just so impractical, and so but you only realise years later that it wasn't meant to be practical at all. It's meant to be funny.
You mentioned Kevin Neal then. I did give a right smile when you said you had difficult kind of working out how he did it, because of course you did have to work out how he did it, because you did the final Nemesis story with him finishing it off. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was really good. I think I would have done it in a completely different way now. I probably had a lot of I had Kevin O'Neill in the back of my mind all the time, because that was the only way that I saw Nemesis. And unfortunately, I could have put in a lot of my own input into Nemesis, really, and I should have. But it was a long time ago, and I think at the time I thought, well, I've got to go in this direction, because I think that this is the only way it'll work, is if I sort of try and channel Kevin O'Neill in some little way. And the easiest thing to channel him is to think of epic proportions. You think of little tiny people and everything's huge, and then you can't go far wrong. And you kind of think, because the Nemesis, everything is big, everything is huge. So I tried to sort of like do as much of that as possible. But
I mean, that must have been a pretty daunting gig.
No, it wasn't daunting at the time. Because it was just another gig. But like, sorry, my stomach's going. And but it's just another gig, really. But like, I think it was. Andy Diggle, who was the editor at the time, said, we've got you this one, Nemesis, and I did actually think, oh wow, really? I perhaps didn't. It didn't function in my head.
Right.
That it was really And when I was reading Pat Mill's script, to be honest with you, it didn't feel like I couldn't imagine. It being one of the like book one or book two. It didn't feel like it. I thought, I'm not sure where this is coming from. I had to put a lot of work into that one, because I didn't know where it was going or what to do with it, to be honest.
Okay. So we've talked a bit about your early comics influences, so your Ken Reeds and Jack and Jills and all that and the other.
Yeah.
But did you always want to be an artist? Was this a thing from early days?
I did always want to be an artist. It was just something that I mean, my parents had it. And I think my mum used to draw a lot. She went to art college. And there was a lot of sculpture on my grandparents' side, and I think it used to make wooden boats and things like that, sort of little miniature things from Napoleon Wars, little square riggers and things like that. And then there was, on my dad's side, he used to be an architect and do lots of detailed pencil drawings of churches and things like that. So it very much in the watercolour, but very, making sure every single stone is drawn, that type of detail. And so that I always knew that I had a raw talent, because people would sort of always tell me I got a lot of encouragement from everywhere, every direction, and at school as well. There was a lot of encouragement, and people in the class used to say, describe me as the one that could draw. That was who I was.
Yeah.
So and I always thought, well, I'll be extremely lucky if I ever got a job drawing, and I think comics is one of the very few industries that you can draw, and it's not just drawing, because you don't want to draw the same thing every day, or having to redo a job. And that would be so tedious. Comics is one of the few things where you do a drawing, it's done, it's finished, you send it away, you're on to the next one, and you can do 2 or 3 drawings a day, and not redo them, and that is bliss. Absolute bliss.
So it was comics you wanted to go into?
I think so. I had a thing for comics as well, so I mean the two combined. And so it was I didn't know that that's what would happen, because it was always a dream job. It was something that if I could choose my future, that would be what I would choose. But I should be so lucky. It was never going to happen. Yeah.
So it was it something that you went off to college to do, or were there sort of other jobs in between?
There were. What was there in between? No. I did a spell at King Roller Studios. They were the people that did Mr. Ben.
Yeah.
And so I did animation for a while. Not much, but just a little bit of animation here and there. I think it was working on some kind of bird or something. I forgot what it was, but they'd just completed. I think it was King Towser. It was the dog Towser.
Yeah.
So they'd just done that, and the guy who the director, he opened this door in this little cupboard and opened a drawer, and there was all these Mr. Ben cutouts with arms and legs everywhere. Yeah. The originals. Right. I just thought, that's beautiful. That really is something. And I should have just taken a leg or something. That would have been terrible, but I mean, it was just nice to sort of see all those little things. But yes, so I did that for a little bit. Then I went to college for quite a few years, because Thatcher just funded everything, so it was all free back then. So as long you could make your further education go as long as possible, really, and you get paid for it. So we did. So I had 2 years at doing a BTEC foundation course in art. Before that, I did a year technical. I wanted to be an architect. That was what I thought would be best to get
following the father's steps, kind of thing.
Because I was into drawing, I thought being an architect was the way to go. But I did about 6 months of that and thought, I don't like this, I can't do it. I think it was a lesson all about U-bends and toilets, and I thought, I don't want to do this. So I thought, that's it, no, get out. So I got out and I finished a few O-levels and things, and then got myself onto this art course. And of course, Trevor Hessheim was on the same art course, and this was in Exeter. So we did 2 years there, and then I think Trevor went down to Cornwall to do a further 2 years on an HND illustration course. We're based in Redruth at the time, in this big I think it was about 5 or 6 story high building, but it was the highest building in Cornwall until you get to New York. Right. So it was quite tall. I shared a student house with Trevor there, and we were both into comics, and we'd always kind of draw comic characters and things like that, Batman and things like that, in sketchbooks, when we should be listening to history lectures and things like that. So it was a good 4 years. That was good. And then finishing that, I went back to live in Exeter, I think, and tried to get some kind of career on the go. I think Trevor was the first. His artwork is incredible. He had a really good style and a very good ability to draw figures, which I always envied. I thought he was really good at that. And he got a job, I think, before I did. I went through a different route. I got a job. I went up to Nottingham for an interview with a few other people to get a job doing this comic for Games Workshop, which never took off. But there were a few people in there that I met and got to know. I think Steve White was there, Alan Cowsill, another guy, and these people I've got to credit for, give them credit for sort of moving my name about to different places. From there, from White Dwarf and things that never happened there, I then did another job at Tundra, because they obviously had a lot of money coming in from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it was going everywhere, that money, and that they threw a bit my way. No, they didn't throw any money my way, because I did something that was cancelled, so I didn't get anything, because they wanted me to do this story with it had a Doberman in it, and I drew the soppiest looking dog ever, and it was like a poodle, and they said no, they wanted a big aggressive Doberman, and I completely got it wrong, so they didn't publish that one, and I didn't do very much work on it, and I did another story that was published in let me try and think what it was. It was Heavy Metal, and that I don't like looking at that artwork because it wasn't very good, but it was in full colour, and there was a few things. The Monster Massacre was another one. Simon Bisley did a cover for it, and that was all published by Tundra, and then my name got flung about again, and I moved from Tundra over to Marvel UK. Marvel UK, it was just before they folded, so I did one issue of Death's Head, which was the last issue of Death's Head to be published, and then 4 issues of Kill Frenzy. And Kill Frenzy was a new character, and about halfway through I completed 2 comic books, and halfway through I was told that Marvel UK was going to fold, because it wasn't viable for the UK market. So I was told that I would get paid for the final 2, but no one would ever see them. So these 4 issues that I did, no one has seen them. But I did 4 issues that have just. It was good, even though no one will see them. It was good to sort of just. It was like practicing. So in a way, it was good that no one saw that artwork because it was so bad. But on the other hand, it was it was difficult to draw because I knew no one was going to see it. Right. So it was, so I didn't do a very good job, knowing that why should I do a good job? What's the point of doing a good job? Yeah. But I remember picking up a style at the end of that work and thinking, actually, this is all right. This is quite good. I'm enjoying it, and I kind of got good at the end of it. Then, when they folded, I thought that was it. I spent Christmas 93. I moved back home, I think, with my parents, and I didn't have a job, and that was it. And I thought, well, I made a fair go of it with the comics, and I thought that's all right. At least I tried. And then, sorry, this is a long answer.
No. Seriously,
and then I think I got a call from, because my name got passed over to 2000D, and I think it was Alan McKenzie, could have been, gave me a call and said, I think it was, he just phoned me up out the blue. My number, I don't know where he got my number from, and just said there's a space if you in 2000D if you'd like to come and work for us, you know, and put me on Road Trooper, and and very grateful.
I mean, that's a remarkable story. In that several times, as an industry collapses around you, several times work's kind of landed in your lap.
Yeah, because it's just going from one sinking ship to another, really.
Hey, so once you don't drown, you're fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Tundra was a sinking ship at the time. I think because it had so much money from Teenage Mutant Turtles that was going well. But there was other things that were just going off all the time. Nothing seemed stable. Everything was moving and shifting at the time.
Why do you think your name was being passed around at the time?
I think there was a set list. There was a set list of creators who were working for Marvel, who were doing the rounds. My name got picked up right at the beginning when I was for Games Workshop, simply because it was I think a few people in there were just saying, yeah, this person's involved, who's this, and my name was just getting sort of shifted around. But I mean, I don't know how the politics of it worked back then. I mean, if it's to do with meeting people and just going for meetings and showing portfolios off and things like that, I think that's half of it. But I mean, I didn't mentally know that was what you had to do at the time. It just sort of seemed to be the right thing. But you know, once things start picking up speed and going, you sort of just run with it. Whoever offers you anything, you just go and say, yeah, I'll have a go at that.
So you started working on Road Trooper at a funny time for the strip. Because the original series had finished, War Machine had turned into something quite different. You joined it just as was it Steve White?
Steve White
taking over writing it, and he was trying to put it, such is my understanding, trying to put it back on an even keel after the Michael Fleischer years. What was your attitude to getting that job? What kind of direction did you want to take it in?
It was interesting because when they offered me Road Trooper, I mean, I'd never turned down anything that they were going to offer me, but like it was the last thing that I thought that I would get, to be honest, because Road Trooper never seemed to be something that I'd want to do or pick as a favourite character to draw. I'd probably draw something a bit more surreal, a bit more sort of out there, rather than, because Road Trooper it was very grounded, needed a grounding. So I had to sort of relearn a style and see if I could sort of change the way I worked to change it into a more grounded. I don't know if I succeeded, and it was too cartoony, the stuff that I did, but. So I did try and change, and I remember going up to a comic shop in Exeter and buying a load of G.I. Joe. I think it was G.I. Joe or no, Sergeant Rock.
Oh right.
Comics, and by Joe
Kubert.
Joe Kubert, and trying to figure out how good that looked and what Road Trooper needed, and I might have gone down the wrong direction, but I was trying to make it sort of this American GI thing, and I gave Road Trooper some flares and that loose straps around the helmet, and try to give him a bit more of a. If I could give him stubble, I would have given him stubble, but like I don't think Road Troop GI's grow stubble,
Yeah,
do they?
yeah.
No, they don't. So, yeah, I think I was just trying to have a different take on it. I should have gone down the Dave Gibbons and had a look at the original artwork and gone, okay, this needs to be like this.
Because Steve's scripts are very heavy on the kind of high-tech military technobabble kind of stuff, weren't they?
Yeah.
Lots of descriptions of what guns people are using and things like that.
I can't remember a lot of the scripts. I mean, I haven't read any of those Rogue Troopers for a very long time. I mean, the first issue I did, there was a huge mammoth, and the mammoth was had homes and people living on its back in this big house. And it was just it didn't seem to me like a Rogue Trooper thing. It seemed to me like something from Conan or it's like a fantasy thing. But I should have drawn it like a future war thing, and perhaps I didn't. Perhaps I'll But it's all learning, isn't it? You kind of got to know your genre before you start doing any work. You know what actually it is. What type of story that you're trying to tell? What was
editorial's sort of feedback on what you were doing at the time?
I don't think I had any.
Right.
No, I think there was accepting the work, and as long as it was on deadline, I think it was good.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you were alternating with Steve Tappin, weren't you?
Yeah.
Was there and we did have a little chat about this before we started recording.
Yeah. You said that I looked very nice. You thought that we were one of the same person.
Yeah, I was a teenager. What did I know? There was a similarity there that didn't necessarily click immediately in my head.
Yeah.
Were you riffing off one another?
I knew that when Steve Tapman's work was in the comic, I was thinking, oh, that looks similar to mine. Yeah, and I did, and I think that was, he had probably a lot more flexibility in his own work and skill that he could change. I mean, Steve Tappan, I kind of met. First of all, when I went up to Games Workshop, and I met him up there. I liked his style. I thought it was good. I mean, we're doing the same thing with the same inks and the same paper and the same, and it was trying to get a translucent effect with the inks. So you know that the comic is going to be printed in using the style at the time, which was I think it was a photograph or lithograph. I don't know what it was actually, to be honest. But I know the results of the photo process, which made the illumination of the white of the page glow through the coloration. So the less paint you had on the page, the sharper and brighter the printed page would look when it was published. So I think me and Steve knew that, and we sort of had the same technique just out of that, really. Because obviously there was a lot of people trying to do the Simon Bisley method, which wasn't particularly good for the process, because it would lose a lot of the translucency of the artwork, and but yeah, so some worked, some didn't. It was, I think it was just the paper quality of the thing that needed that kind of approach to the work. But
what did you learn on that strip? Because you did it for quite a while, didn't you?
Yeah. So I think it was a year or so. I think it was trying not to be so cartoony, because you look back on. First of all, you've got to look at what 2000 is, and it is about anti-heroes, and to draw anything slightly cartoony, it isn't good because it's not a cartoony thing. You have to be gritty, you have to be real, you have to draw figures that look like figures to begin with, and so I had to change that look and get a bit more professional, get a bit more because I wanted the readers to sort of believe what I was drawing was real, and when you're drawing in such a way that it doesn't look real, that can be a real setback. So it's constantly learning, and when every day you're just learning things all the time.
It was a bit of a dark period for 2008, kind of mid to late 90s. Were you conscious of that as a reader and also working for them? It was it was a very strange time. I'm just trying to think of
I wasn't aware of how 2000 AD was right on the edge of people say that it was going to be cancelled and that wasn't any fault of the comics so much as the fault of management at the time, the owners who tried to manage the comic and failed, and money was shifted around for unnecessary project reasons, in the form of advertising and things like that. So vast sums were paid, just to get 2000 AD on shows on telly and things like that. I think 2000 AD appeared on Have I Got News for You or something. I don't know. It's just people pulling strings and thinking, well, what's this company up to? I don't get it.
Well, it was the whole marketing-led lads mag.
Oh no, and that was that appeared in the documentary as well. Because that was that's a dreadful mistake. And I remember I think it was Dave Bishop was on the phone to me about that. I think he was talking how disappointed he was. The editorial and the staff was doing their best, but it was swimming against the cliche time. But it was a tough job back then. But I'm glad. And of course, when I first joined, I made the mistake of not invoicing for the comic, and it was quite a few months before I got a call from Dave Bishop saying, "Look, we haven't paid you." And it was about £10,000 or something like that, and that I hadn't invoiced for. And one of the first questions was, "How are you living?" Because he didn't understand how I was being able to work and live at the same time without being paid, and because I was living with my parents.
Right.
And I was sort of crossing my fingers that one day a cheque would magically appear. And no one told me that to sort of like send an invoice for the work, because it was that was how unprofessional I was. So I got my first. Dave Bishop told me that I almost crippled 2000 AD, and 2000 AD almost became, and it would have been my fault. It would have been my fault that 2000 AD folded, because I almost bankrupted them. Just with this huge invoice, could I have £10,000 please for about half a year's work? Oh my god! I
mean, what a way to go! Sunk by one artist and one invoice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it obviously didn't do your chances of getting more work any harm.
No, it didn't. No, it moved on straight from there, and they've been incredibly good throughout the years. And I haven't, although I've worked for other companies as well, I've done a few things for America. Work has always been there if I've needed it. So a lot of the time I work for 2SD simply because I trust them to sort of look after me in a certain way, because I know that the work will always be there. If something finishes, another script will appear.
Yeah.
And it's almost like magic, it's like the magic 2000D fairy, is being good to me.
So probably now multiple artists shaking their fists in frustration. Why doesn't the script come from me as well? Because I mean, during that phase, so after Rogue Trooper, and we'll talk about moving on to Zombo and your Wider Dredd stuff in a bit. You do kind of hop around quite a lot. You did Sancho Panzer.
Yes.
Which again was still in quite a cartoony style.
It was.
Yeah.
And I was using magic markers for that as well.
Right.
I enjoyed working on that, but it was cartoony. I didn't know what to do. It was a new creation, and I didn't quite know which direction to take it. So that was probably my fault. I should have just gone a bit gritty, and that tank, I should have made it into a real mean tank. And instead, I just had a brainwave, which I thought was a brainwave one day, which thought, why don't do a remote controlled toy, and then just upscale it into massive, and it was like, oh no. As soon as I drew the first, I thought, I'm going to have to draw this again and again and again. And I thought, no, this is...
And that strip went on for quite a long time.
Yeah. Well, I think it was about 10 issues, I think. Yeah, before it folded. I think it was 10. No, it could have been more. I have no idea how long it was.
I think it was quite long. Quite long. But you've got a history with tanks, haven't you? Because you did Haunted Tank.
I did Haunted Tank. Yeah. That what goes around comes around, because that's going back to Joe Kubrick again. Yeah. So that's the whole thing, and he did a cover for one of my comics as well. So it's like, wow, that's great. And and Haunted Tank was. That was slightly better because I took photographs. I made a tank up. It was one of these Abram M2 whatever tanks, the American ones that used in Iran, first Iraq War, and I made one up with Airfix kit thing, and whatever shot I needed, I'd take a photograph of it.
Yeah.
Of the model, and then I'd print it out and use that as the and it looked really good. And I thought, that's the way to do it. And you could foreshorten everything using the. You could do that on the computer now, can't you?
Yeah.
By buying model things on the computer. But that took too long to draw that,
right?
And I almost bankrupt myself actually because I was taking too long in every episode. But I'm very pleased with the way that looked.
Because I remember at the time reading that this is a bizarre concept. It was literally a haunted tank.
It was a haunted tank. Yeah, it's weird.
With like the what was it? The ghost of a Confederate general or something.
Yeah, and there were loads of strange. And the Americans had on the issue of race and things like that had to deal with everything. They deal with everything really up front. Things that I would be a bit sort of squeamish about doing, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have to trust the writer that he knows what he's doing. And go for it anyway. So I'm hoping it worked, but I don't think it was really for any. Well, I don't know what kind of audience it was for, to be honest. But it was. It had a. It had messages. You know, it was.
And that
it was trying to be right on, I think.
Because that wasn't your first work for the States, was it? Because you
I did.
You've done some Silver Surfer.
I did a Silver Surfer. Yeah. That was the Rune and Silver Surfer, and that was a long time ago. I think that was the first thing I did. And I did the pencils and someone else inked it, and I had a message from my editor at the time, and he said the inker is having problems because he doesn't know how to ink your pencils. And I just thought, oh. Well, I told him, I said I want to do the inks. I said, no, this isn't how we do it in America. So, you know, there's a penciler and an inker, you know, but my stuff, you know, I need to ink my own pencils.
Is it because they're sketchy? Is there a lot? Are you one of these artists where most of your work is in the inking?
Yeah, most of the work's in the inking.
Right.
I think I was just doing rough outlines with the pencils, and there was a lot to the imagination, and I thought a decent inker would just know what to do. And of course. You know, an inker. You know, you got to put everything there so that they do. And if you leave a gap, thinking, oh, I'm going to fill that up with something amazing. The inker will just see a gap and just won't do anything with it. Just leave a blank space. And I was looking at the artwork, saying, well, why has he left a blank space there with nothing in it? And then I'd look at my pencils and go, well, you've left a blank space there. So, right, but it's learning all the time, isn't it? It's just constantly learning.
One thing I wanted to ask about was about colour, because with a lot of your stuff, particularly on Dredd, you've been coloured by Chris Blythe, but you've also done stuff yourself. Was that a conscious desire to colour things yourself, to do them the way that you wanted to do?
I think it was an idea where. You have an idea of where the colour's going. You think, I think it's sometimes you want to see a finished product exactly how you think it should look. And I think especially with Zombo, I coloured that all myself because I wanted to get a kind of feel as though I was part of the whole process, beginning to end. But I don't think it's necessary. With Dredd, I don't think it's necessary that I colour that in myself, because the feel of Mega City 1 is already established. So Chris Blythe obviously colours my stuff. He sort of knows the feeling of Mega City 1, so he can do a good job of that. So it's just a matter of. But sometimes I think, I'll step in and have a go simply because I fancy it. I think more than anything. Yeah.
How does that impact the way that you do things? Because you've already talked about how a lot of your work is in the inking. When you're colouring, when you know you're going to colour your own stuff, does that affect how you then ink something? Because you think, I'll fill this in later.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways of inking to make the colouring work a lot simpler. If you use lots of blacks and fill out everything, or you could almost like paint bucket the entire page in one colour and it would work. But if you're just using line very sparingly, you know, it does put the colorist has so much work to do because they can't just put one colour down, that they have to rearrange the whole page really and start from scratch. But you know, I like to fill the page out, you know, and hopefully I'm not too bad for colorists. You know, it's difficult to know whether one person is easier than the other person to colour. I don't know.
Because thinking about the whole kind of one colour thing, there's that wonderful moment in the beginning of Enceladus where Dredd orders the ship blown out the sky, and that's mostly red.
Oh yes.
I can't remember. Did you colour Enceladus yourself?
Oh yes, I did that one myself. Yeah, and they're all in a room, and I think it was like some kind of command room, and there was I just thought of like a U-boat, like having emergency lighting. Would be just all red. But of course, then you've got buttons which are different colours, and so you've got nice yellows or something just lighting up one side of bodies and things.
Yeah.
So that kind of works quite well. So although it looks all red, you sort of cut little bits out where the light's shining and things. It's just one of those nice things to do every once in a while. Do a bit of colouring.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you enjoy it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and you kind of think, well, I've been doing pencils and inks and this, that, and you just think, just get on the computer and do some colouring because you can sort of it's another form of switching off and doodling and enjoying it, and it's just another way of expressing yourself, isn't it? Sort of putting a bit of colour on sometimes. Yeah. But Matt's very good. Sometimes you just say, do you mind if I colour this? But that's another thing. It's time. You don't get a lot of time sometimes to do things, and usually it's better just to get the story out there. Ink it up and done. Otherwise, you could be spending 6 months on just a couple of episodes, and it's just if you're doing everything yourself, and it's just not viable. Well, financially viable for myself if I colour stuff up. I can do it, but it takes me a long time. I can only colour about like 2 pages a day anyway, so I mean that's I can't live on that.
Because this is what I find interesting, having talked about how American comics weren't a huge influence on you when you were younger. The fact that there is Kirby seems like a natural home for you.
Oh yeah,
that kind of cosmic new gods kind of madness.
Well, I came to Kirby quite late,
right? Okay.
But when I did, it was like, I kind of got this. And I thought, that's what I would have been reading if I was a kid in the 60s, which I wasn't. Wasn't around. But wow, Kirby stuff was incredible. But it's kind of on the back of other people telling me, you should. Al Ewing is another guy who sort of said, look, you look at this guy's work, and they go, I know Jack Kirby, I know. And you think you know, and then you look at it under the surface. And I did buy New Gods. It's probably on there somewhere. And beautiful work, really amazing. And it's especially the splash pages and it's also drawing things that no one has ever seen before. So you can be sure that one of his originals is something. You go. It really is literally out of this world. It's just like, wow, that's great.
I mean, this seems like a perfect opportunity to talk about Zombo. Where I interviewed Al just recently, and he's quite upfront with the fact that the original idea was yours.
Yes, I think. Matt Smith, he got Al in. I wasn't sure what Al had. I hadn't read much of his stuff because he was only just sort of starting out. So as soon as I kind of thought, well, I really want to do this myself. That was my first thing, because
and then you pitched that to Matt.
Yeah, I pitched it for Matt, and it was like a vehicle for me to go mad on. And I thought, well, what I really want is to be able to sort of write something myself, and do something that isn't in 2000 at the time. Do something quite mad. And Matt, in his wisdom, actually did give it to Al and sort of say, want Al to write it. And I thought, well, okay, we'll give it a shot. I'm really pleased he did, because my take on Zombo would have been completely different. It would have been it wouldn't have the humour, and it would have been a bit more surreal, because what I was trying to do was something along the time Lost was on Channel 4 at the time, and I wanted to do something on the lines of Lost, and also I'd watched the Grapes of Wrath, which was an amazing film, and I just thought, well, people on a raft just going nowhere, and also having surreal elements where people would just go in circles and in a maze, nothing. One of the things that I wanted to do was have nothing explained, and to have everything up in the air. Everything was a puzzle. The readers wouldn't know where they were, and I just wanted to sort of annoy everyone just by having a story with no story, something, that wouldn't have worked. It might have worked for like 10 issues, and then that would have been it. And say, well, it was an experiment. It was just one of those things that happen in 2000 every so often that come and go, and then people forget about. And so it didn't have any longevity, my idea. So Al sort of like used my original pitch for the episode 1, for the series 1. And then after that, for the next few series, I didn't have any say at all. I just went, you know what? I'm not going to have any more input on this, because he was doing so well. He was coming up with some amazing ideas, and every so often we'd go into a pub and we'd have a chat about what he would want to do with the next one. And all I'd do is give him, say, a little tiny hint on something that I'd like to draw, and then he'd run with it. So one of them was I'd like to draw the Beatles, and he'd go, right, okay, right, what we'll do is this, we'll do this, and I'd go, okay, and then he'd go, there's 4 Beatles, so what it is 4, there's 4 people in the Fantastic Four. We'll have the Fantastic Four in as well, and his brain would just go, right, we'll have this and this will work with this, and I'll be in hysterics, because it would just be so funny listening to him, sort of like, because also I'd be thinking, what are the readers going to make of this when it's in the comic? So we were just sort of just laughing, thinking this is ridiculous, really, most of the time. And so I think that was one of the a learning lesson for me, realising that creating something, especially in comics, just works so much better when you get 2 people collaborating, working together on something. It just sort of seems to click, and things seem to sort of happen that they perhaps wouldn't when you're doing something on your own. And the Zombo sort of seemed to just be good fun, really, apart from anything else.
There's so many kind of, as you say, things ticked off. Like there's the Fantastic Four, there's X Factor, there's Planetronics, which is one of my favourite favourite bits, which is completely throwaway.
Yeah, that's all Al. That's all his stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you were drawing Zombo, and I say this a lot in interviews because I tend to be attracted to strips where I can sense this. You seem to be having a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. I was in that one. Yeah. It seemed to it seemed to be enjoyable, because you sort of like creating new things all the time, and things were, they weren't fixed in any position. I think the original reason why I came into wanting to do a brand new character, like and coming up with Zombo, I mean, it's not original idea. I mean, it's like he's like an anti-hero. So immediately I just thought, well, okay, zombie. We haven't done a zombie anti-hero in 2000 AD. and that's what 2000 is all about anyway. So let's do that, and I need a story now. So the story sort of evolves, and you go through there, and then it's. So what was the original thing again? Because I've slightly gone off.
No. I was enjoying where you were going with that one.
Yeah. Well, I think it was. It was the fun thing. Where does that come from? But. I've wound myself into a corner, and I don't know where I am. I've kind of lost in the maze.
Let's talk about style on Zombo, because those early episodes have something at the Aubrey Beardsley about them. Down to you literally drawing every hair on someone's head at the same line thickness, which is very nice, but I imagine was quite time consuming.
Oh, there is a method I draw to make that quicker. That's not too. You can get into a therapeutic line work, state of mind when you're drawing like that. Yeah,
but the style on the strip has evolved over time. So as you seem to have become more comfortable in your style, the Dredd series, I know this was a few years ago now, is much more in keeping with the kind of stuff you're producing these days. That kind of slightly dirty, slightly gritty. There's more your style than necessarily being able to point at it and go, well, that's influenced by this. Yeah.
There's a lot more. I want to get sort of like into the pen and ink a lot more. I've tried dip pen, and I can't. Every time I go, I want to do dip pen again, it never works out, and it always frustrates me. But all you need is a good gel pen, because they run really fast, and it's about getting that line really quick, and that line not having faith and confidence that line will be a line. But even though it takes a split second to draw, you don't want it to break up. So sort of a gel pen or something like that is perfect. But it's about I think the style. It always changes and evolves through time, and I'm trying to get a style now that is more like a 70s thing that people were trying to do. Those architect pictures in the 70s with people in flares that you'd sort of transfer and put onto architect pictures, that type of thing. But the lines would be so thin that you just go, oh my goodness, how thin? What kind of? But then you try it out yourself, and it becomes scratchy. It's too scratchy. So you got to sort of weigh up fatter lines next to the thin lines to make the contrast work, between the two, and it's trying to get that weight right, and I haven't got there yet because my work doesn't look anything like those architect pictures. So it's constantly trying to sort of figure out how they did it. Yeah.
But it's interesting that you're constantly seeking to evolve your style. You've not kind of settled on this.
You mentioned Audrey Beardsley as well. So I had a thing where a few years ago sort of like went through a phase of just loving his work, because I'd never really appreciated his work until I bought a book on his stuff and just went, whoa, this is incredible, especially when you think about he died when he was 25, so all his work that you see, and he influenced the 20th century really in the, because before Beardsley you'd have all the Victorian cross-hatching illustration, then afterwards it would just be the whiplash line everywhere. So you kind of use that as a basis of where illustration has come from, today's illustrations come from, and it all originates with Beardsley. Beardsley. Oh no!
Wow, what a contrast!
I know. Bizu would like that one. He
really would.
He'd go, yes. He'd go, yeah, that is me. I did influence the whole of 20th century. Thank you very much.
One aspect that Zombo that really shines through is and we've kind of touched on this already, is your clear love of surrealism and absurdity.
Yeah.
Is that harking all the way back to your kind of love of Ken Reid?
Oh yeah. And it's more of a comedy thing as well, because I did art history, and I realised it comes from Dada and all that thing in after World War One, and there was no humour in it. It was all sort of dark and self-destructive. And then I think in the 80s it became a comedy thing, and Vic and Bob and all that, and surrealism has got sort of a two-edged sword to it now. It's either one thing or and I like that. I like the combination of two normal things, put them together, and you get something strange, and it's things, obviously, again, things that no one has ever seen before. That can only be an eye-opener, really. And it works in comics. Surrealism in comics is just a match made in heaven, really.
You can do whatever you want.
Literally whatever you want. And it's like in comics, you can have like a cast of thousands. You can get any actor you want it to play the lead role. You can spend millions and millions of pounds on special effects. And it's all there.
Have you enjoyed some of the more satirical aspects of Zombo? Because the one that keeps coming up is the whole Trump, Apprentice Trump.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, I don't know where that came. I'm trying to rack my brains. Where Al says that he wasn't in the script and he didn't write Trump in. I kind of think, well, you're probably right. But I kind of pick a character. I don't do it anymore. It was just with Zombo, and I just thought, well, keep it with Zombo. Just this thing of picking actual real people to play the parts of whoever you're drawing. And I thought that was an interesting, little thing to do. Because that first worked out with Russell Brand to putting him in it, and then suddenly I thought, well, you just put in all these famous people, and it's quite good fun. And then Al had fun with it, and he was suggesting other people to put in, and it was great. And then with Trump, it was just like trying to think. I think Al might have said someone like Trump. Or I might have just said, just thought, well, I'll do a president. What would be the most absurd person to be the president? I'll put Trump. Make him the president, And it's just a strange. But it doesn't look like Trump. The way I've drawn him doesn't look. I just sort of taken a likeness. I don't think I used a photograph. I just sort of went into my head and just thought, well, what does Trump look like? And tried to think, and draw a Trump-looking character. I knew vaguely that he had his hair was just very thin, so I just thought, well, I'd do that. And
I mean, we're laughing about it now, but inside we're crying. One thing I love seeing on social media is your doodles when you're watching TV, and tell me a little bit how they come about.
It's a long time ago. I was on a holiday in Butlins, and it was trying to sort of had a young daughter. She's we're on holiday, getting no time, no time to myself, except for like a couple of hours at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I was watching telly and doodling and thinking, I don't really want to draw anything. I don't want to draw a figure because it's using my brain, and I don't want to use my brain. And it kind of sort of just emerged in a scribble, and a scribble turned into something. And I had so much fun with it. that I kept on doing different variations of it on following days, and just thinking, I love this. I'm just getting something out of it, really. And there was a book released on the first set of doodles I did. And I really just call them doodles because they're not anything else. And I'm trying not to be pretentious about it, because it does look to a lot of people that it is sort of pretentious arty stuff, and it's really not. It's me just trying to relax and just do something that isn't. Unscramble my brain in some kind of form, and to do that just by switching off. It's like an on-off switch in my head. You just sit down, blank piece of paper, and scribble the hell out of it and get something done. And I still do them today, and with different variations of it, and I get a lot out of it. Yeah.
And if it's about decompression, if it's about kind of switching off, do you think that has a beneficial aspect when you do come to sit down and you've kind of got the static out of your head, kind of thing?
Yeah. It could be a thing where you improve your actual job in a professional job, where you're doing a certain amount of scribbling or getting that out of your system. Then you can concentrate on figure work in another aspect of the work that you do. So yeah, it could be that. I haven't really looked into it, deconstructing it to sort of see, but I think that's almost like it in a way. It's not to be deconstructed, because it's like going to sleep at night. What button in your head do you push to make yourself sleep? And it's exactly the same with the artwork. It's sort of saying, well, what do you enjoy doing? Well, what actually gives you a thrill? And it's sometimes it's like the unknown. Like you scribble something, and you're looking at that scribble just to sort of see a picture in it. And if there is a picture, it's probably better than anything you could draw yourself. If you wanted to reach that conclusion in the doodle, you couldn't do it, because it's something that has come from somewhere else. So you it's a good exercise, but that's all it is. It's an exercise, and it shouldn't be looked on as anything other than that. Otherwise you can get pretentious and sort of going, oh yeah, I'll do all this arty stuff.
I'm tapping into the subconscious.
yeah, it could seem a bit arty. And I want to sort of stay away from that, and sort of and call it for what it is. It's just sort of, yeah.
But it evokes me, I mean, talking about surrealism, it does evoke that kind of what several of the surrealist artists were trying to do, which is cut out the middleman between their subconscious and their hand, kind of thing.
Yes.
And just paint whatever comes.
Yes, that was written in the Dada Manifesto. Where I think it was the second. I think it was the second interpretation of what Dada was. I think the first was I can't even remember what the first was, but the second was there was a word for it. There's a word for it, and I've forgotten it. But it was something to do with. No, it's gone. But it wasn't. I wish I had that word. I wish I had that word. But it was something to do with, as you say, tuning out and automatization, something like that. Something like that. But Google it.
Little job for the listeners there. With the advent of Zombo, that kind of came roughly round about the same time that you became a regular on Dredd. And it feels like with those two strips, you've made your mark. That's Henry Flint. That they're your defining strips now, whereas before, to a certain extent, you were kind of, because you did a bit of Nikolai Dante, you did Nemesis, you did this, that, and
ABC Warriors, because I was doing other people's characters a lot, and because I always thought of myself up to a certain point as an artist for hire, and if I needed to fill in or do something for other people, I'd sort of like put myself in that position, and I always thought that things like ABC Warriors and other things, I sort of, you know, other artists can do sort of better. I mean. Clint Lanley's work on ABC was amazing, and I couldn't sort of like equal that one. And it was kind of like finding your space and your foothold really in the comic. And I think you're probably right, Zombo and Dredd, and I'm really chuffed that I'm on Dredd. that's a great one,
It's interesting to look back at the history, particularly of Dredd, and seeing epochs of certain artists and certain writers coming in and doing their own thing, and it feels very much like there is a select group of artists and now writers as well who are stamping their own authority. You know, this is the age of Henry Flint, Ben Wilshire. My mind's completely blank for others, but you know, do you feel that? Does it feel like you're part of a category?
Yeah. Even though I've been in the comic for such a long time, because you always look back on your old stuff and think, I could do so much better than that, and you think, well. You know, you're striving to sort of reach a certain amount of standard for yourself, and the comic does have, because for me there are epochs in the comic as well, because I'm trying to sort of think of all the artists and creators that were in it, and when I think of the generations, I think of say anyone who was in the first 100 progs. It is part of the first generation, say, and I say, well, who's the second generation? That would be sort of Steve Dillon and everything up to Simon Bisley, perhaps. And does that mean I'm third generation? I don't know. I don't know where the second and third generation comes.
Yeah,
sort of.
I don't know, because when was your first book? 94. So I don't know, maybe fourth generation, because you've got the first one, then you've got the second. So you've Steve Dillon, your Steve Yowles, that kind of thing. Then you've got your Bisleys and
that'll be third, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So you kind of come along in the mid '90s, and
so that'll be the fourth.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be with Jock and Fraser Irvine and that group as well. I'll go along with that. That's good. It's good company to be in.
You've done a few little things that I just wanted to touch on, because I really enjoyed them. First off was the one-page Future Shocks. Now, 2000 AD hasn't had one-page Future Shocks for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And then you did a run of was it about half a dozen?
Yeah.
Which we put in. Was that just ideas that popped into your head?
Yeah. There was a reason I did that. There was I asked Matt, he and we had a talk about it, because what I thought that 2000 needed at the time was I was. It was reminiscing and harking back to the early progs that I used to read. And they they seemed to be packed full of things, with star pin-ups and one-page stories. And I thought, to fill out the comic, to have like a one-page story, it would sort of bulk it a bit and sort of make it seem bigger than it was. So it was looking at the comic and sort of seeing what I could do with the comic to make it seem different, and have that feel of being bigger than it was. So I think that was the main reason, and I think Matt quite kind of like thought it was a good experiment,
Yeah.
sort of to go with it. He originally wanted to call it Henry Flint's Alien Invasions. And I actually did think about it, and I thought, no, it can't be, because I didn't want that attention, because it seemed a bit egotistical, and so I suggested to Matt that it should be Tharg's, because it's Tharg's comic, he has the right to call his strips after himself, that I thought that would. It's all about Tharg, isn't it? The whole thing is Tharg is the master.
I'll begin this podcast with Borag Tharg and I'll end it with Spundig Berfrig. So gibberish that Pat Mills and Kelvin Gosnell and whatnot came up with 40 years ago. We're still repeating now as mantra. It leads into this whole question about humour. For me, because there's obviously a lot of humour in something like Zombo. You've done stuff for the Free Comic Book Day issues, like you did a game at one point. You did those little Future Shocks that were great. How important is that element of humour? Dark humour quite often, but how important is that for you?
Yeah, I think it's things that will make you laugh, really.
Yeah.
If you think of what will make you laugh most of the time is the reaction that people will get when they read it, and what you imagine them reading it for the first time. You kind of go, you just have a chuckle with yourself. But I'm not. I can't say I'm that good at. I get the odd little idea, but an idea here and there doesn't make you a writer. It really doesn't. And you're kind of aware of that, and you go, It's you try and get your little ideas in to places. And then and have the major framework based around, written by actual people who can do the job properly, the actual writers, and you just hope that your little idea will just sort of be implanted in these various things that you do. Yeah.
So thinking about the early comics that you were reading, now you're dyslexic.
Oh yes. Yes, I am.
How important were comic books in aiding you to read?
Very. I can actually remember, sort of saying to my parents, what's this word? Atomic.
Yeah.
What's this word? Bacterial. And then going chemical. And going through there. So what's that? And then my mum going, all right, yeah. What are you reading? what is this comic? But yeah, it was one of those things where you don't talk about it so much now, because your brain sort of makes up the necessary functions and neural pathways to sort of you kind of learn what you need to get by. But I think it was my wife at the time. She said, you got to sort of perhaps go public and sort of say, mention the fact that you're dyslexic, because it's the kids. The kids read comics, and you might connect with a few of them. If you mention it, and it is all about that them learning, and because school was dreadful. But if you can sort of connect in some way, and there should be comics in schools, really. That's what I think it gets overlooked, and it would be wonderful if there was some kind of learning, some kind of connection where kids can actually feel confident about reading, something that I never had, and that kind of well, I think what I'm trying to say is that the only reason I sort of mention it, because I really don't like a dyslexic bore, someone who goes on and on and on about it, which I am doing at the moment. But if it's sort of like a thing where you can sort of like people get where you come from, and comics were so important when I grew up, because it was all about making a connection with the picture and the words, and going, right, and because you're looking at those pictures, you know where the story is going, and you get an idea of where the story is going, so the words are going to obviously be about the picture. So the two are working hand in hand with each other, and it's an obvious way of telling a story, and something that someone with little reading ability can have confidence that they know where the story is going simply by making the connection between the words and the pictures. And it just seemed an obvious way of telling a story, and that's why I just went, this is for me. Comics is not only want to draw them myself, but read them myself.
Has it impacted your work at all?
No, not really. No. I think there's a lot of talk about because you're not using this part of your brain, you use another part of your brain, but you never miss what you don't have. And I can't say that I'm a prolific reader, because I'm obviously not. But so I don't know what I'm missing when people say, I read 2 books a week or something, and I go, oh really?
Yeah, those people are mad.
But and I think, well, and people actually say that they read because they enjoy reading, and I think, really, you enjoy reading? My God, that's what a nightmare. Having to read because you like it. I mean, that's crazy. But I do listen to a lot of audiobooks, and that's where I get my education. Right. My literal. No, not literal. Yeah. I can't say it, so I won't. Yeah, that's where I get.
I can barely say it. Let's face it. You've been responsible for 2 kinds of Dredd. You've got the main strip in 2000 AD, but you also did the movie tie-in with Arthur Wire and the.
Yes.
So you looked at me really quizzically then, it's like, did I? Which has just been rounded out with Final Judgment with Alex de Campi and Arthur.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a slightly different kettle of fish. You can't use Carl Urban's likeness. No, apparently you can't. Yeah. No. I just put Dredd, usual big chin Dredd, and put him in the suit, the film suit. Yeah, I think it works. Yeah, but I did when I first started drawing the character, it did look a bit more like Carl Urban, but like not his likeness, but very much, very much in that sort of thing. Yeah. Dear, oh dear. Because with the final story, with the appearance of the Dark Judges, there was always that question: how would the Dark Judges be done in the movie?
I thought I thought I knew what they would look like, because I was thinking they would look like the Dark Judges, but they'll be in updated Dark Judges uniform from the movie. So it'd be simple. It would just be like drawing the movie judges, but with slightly elaborate. But no, that they had a completely different idea. And I think it was just a matter of getting on board with what they had in mind, and doing a more Carpenter like the Thing, and I think it was just more movie-esque in the way that not necessarily giving the readers exactly what they were expecting, but like going for sort of that horror element of it, because I think putting sort of strange eagles and things and paraphernalia actually on the suit might have taken a bit away from the fact that it was trying to be a real movie about sort of because the movie had a sense of realism that the comic perhaps didn't have, and it was trying to be a real life situation set in the near future with riot police, and it had that I mean so doing the Dark Judges was difficult because you had to lay off a bit of the fantasy, if you know what I mean. But
we've already mentioned how your style has evolved so much over the last sort of 20 years and continues to evolve. Where do you see it going now? Obviously, you're firmly established on Dredd. You know, the Small House is not the end of your collaboration with Rob on the script, but feels like a kind of defining moment. What's next for you?
Well, I think ideally, if I could choose, I'd probably I'd do a lot more work with Rob, and I'd just sort of do loads and loads of Rob dreads. That would just make my day, because I mean I think that would be something actually, because I mean I'm really pleased with the last with Titan and everything. So I do some more Zombo with Al. This is all in an ideal world, but also I wouldn't mind doing some more creation stuff. Working with other writers, but on brand new characters, because I think new characters is something that when I have so much fun, in the beginning days of doing these things. I mean, with Shakara, obviously, and sort of Zombo, right at the beginning of those, they seem to sort of spark some new interest in comics for me, and I go, ooh, what's possible? And the sky's the limit, and you just think, oh, this is great. And so it'll be new stuff, really. I'd be into doing,
So one of the strips that is a particular favourite of mine is Shakara, which you did with Robbie Morrison, which sort of harking back to talking about the doodles. Almost feels like you've kind of opened up the sluice gate and everything's pouring out, because that's bonkers.
Yeah, I had lots of fun with that one. I was asked, what would you like to draw? And I think I said something. My answer was ridiculous. I said I want to draw loads of new stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't want to draw the same thing twice. And
were you asked this by Matt?
No,
was it Robbie?
It was Robbie.
Oh, God. Can you just imagine going,
And I think Robbie gave a similar reaction. No, he was very good, Robbie. He wouldn't have he wouldn't have mentioned anything. I think he even tried to accommodate what I said.
Yeah.
But that was an awful thing to say to a writer, because what is a writer going to do? Don't draw anything, because I mean it's a sequential comic, isn't it? You've got to draw everything at least twice. So what he did was just have new stuff in every week. There would be something new in there. So he did actually accommodate what I mentioned to him.
It does accelerate. There's no kind of slackening off of the pace. Every week there's something newly ridiculous. Yeah,
it's just one thing after another, really, isn't it? And you get, I think it's not settling down into any kind of format that you recognise. It's just all fast-paced, weird stuff that happens constantly, and you just go, But it's good to draw, because you making stuff up all the time, and I love that. And you put in weird characters, aliens, and you're making up aliens every day, and you're going, well, what can I think of there? Or what would work? Not what would work. Something, what doesn't work, and then put that in anyway, and stuff like that. It's great, and I really like the leanness of the lead characters, the race as well, because they're so weird looking, but they're also what you expect an alien to look. The grey aliens, the sort of long and lanky type of looking alien, and that was good, because I think originally Rob wanted a kind of a Hulk, big muscly guy, and I tried. I was there for weeks trying to design a Shakara character that was big and hulky, and I couldn't do it. It's just impossible. I just thought, well, I'll see if Rob wouldn't mind if I went for the more Spider-Man approach, and went for like a thin character. I thought would be a lot more interesting to draw as well than a big hulky alien.
Well, it seems that stuff like his equipment and his weapons are part of the same aesthetic in the whether it's the laser sword or the shuriken, the chop eyeballs in half and all this, that, and the other. Even his ship is all that very kind of lean and almost distended kind of thing. Is it all about the invention view? Because that's the thing that seems that has really come through in all.
It's about invention, and it's also about what's influencing me at the time. Because at the time with Shakara, I was really into the Geiger, but these things are very short lived. You're into Geiger for like a couple of weeks, perhaps, and it just happened to be coinciding with designing Shakara. I just thought, oh yeah, bones on the outside of your body, all that, and going for the like gimpy, I don't know if you could say that, but like all that sort of strange setup. I mean, because he is in a weird rubbery costume, isn't he? And I sort of did get that when I was doing it. I was thinking, will I get away with that? And I think I did, but and Geiger is definitely warped, and it had a lot of those elements to it, and I love the Eva girl character, because when I got the idea, just put loads of stitches everywhere, as though she's just been put together like a Frankenstein monster kind of thing. So that'll just look great. Going for grotesque and trying to make it look beautiful at the same time, and that's what Geiger was always doing, trying to do. And Shakara was a lot of fun.
Last question. I often see bafflement, worry over the fact that America really has yet to snap you up. You're popular with 2000 AD readers. You've done stuff for America, but it never feels as if you've had that defining series in the way that you have for 2000 AD. Is there a reason for that? Is it just that you've not wanted to go out there and do stuff for them? Is it that you just don't connect with American comics in the same way?
No, I do. I try and connect as much as possible with American comics. So I think the last time I had an opportunity, I think it was to do Hawkman. It was only a couple of years ago, and I did some tryouts for it. And I kind of didn't really, because the story had something to do with a load of other backstories,
right?
And it was like a middle thing to connect something up with something else. I just thought, and also it was written in the Marvel way,
right.
so there was no dialogue, and I didn't know what was going on. I had no connection with it.
Yeah.
I just thought I did about 5 or 6 pages, and I just thought, I just don't understand what's going on in this story. It didn't have any connection with it at all. So I phoned up the editor and said, I'm sorry, but I can't do this. And he said, oh, that's all right. But originally he was saying, well, can you draw like... he was picking bits of my work and saying, can you draw like this? And saying, pointing to stuff that I'd done that he wanted, and I was going, okay. So it was, with 2000 AD, they give you a script and say, there you go, get on with it. And that is so refreshing. It's brilliant. I mean, America is a bit different, that they want a product and they want it to be like this. And before you even start to work on it, they know what they want and how it should look. And I'm not really... I try to fit myself into that sometimes to get a job done, but 2000D is for misfits and oddballs anyway, so I fit straight in.
Well, once again, thank you to Henry for that interview from all the way back then. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's come back next week when we're going to be chatting to Alec Worley and Danny about the Black Beth special, which is out now from all good comic book stores, newsagents, and also the Treasury of British Comics in 2000 AD or web shop. So we'll see you in 7 days. And until then, stay safe, as always. Enjoy the improving weather and splendid Vethrig.
Alert! 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 Fill power levels dangerously high. Alert! Alert! Read 2000 AD every week. Ask your comic book store or newsagent now. Subscribe to the galaxy's greatest comic at 2000ADonline.com.